stand on our master fee schedule so that we don't have confusion. We are going to only keep them in the master fee schedule and take them out of the ordinance themselves. So they'll be referenced in the ordinance, refer to the master fee schedule. So there's no confusion. And that's essentially really it. The big items. We went over the water rates, I know 3 or 4 times over the last several months. And so those are the big talking points I just wanted to cover, and I'll address those in the general meeting as well. But just want to see if you had questions. So. Okay. Thank you.
It was just any questions about tonight's agenda?
None for me.
All right, so we'll just move ahead to what? 2.2 future agenda items. I mentioned a few. We all mentioned a few last week, or we have those kind of scheduled.
We're not scheduling anything yet because we don't know. We have to know when everybody's going to be here on the harassment training, and then the direction if you want to do it the same night on the other 2 items or bring them back spaced out. Because we're going to have 1 meeting in the month of July, 2 in August. But to get that person to come and do the training, we know who's going to be here.
Sure.
So we can probably do that in July, maybe if he's available.
Okay. And then the other things I noted from last time was we're gonna have ETA come out.
I believe that Carlton is scheduled.
Yeah, we have Carlton scheduled. We have also South Valley Sewer. I can't
Treadway.
remember off the top of my head. They're both scheduled for one's July, one's August.
Correct.
I think Carlton's August. And
Craig
Craig White is July 10th, if I remember right. So we just follow up on everything and just try to keep moving.
Any others? Okay. 3.1.
Can I maybe just mention 9.7? This is the ordinance amending animal control ordinance. So as we've been running to get this done, there's a couple things we've missed. So we're asking for an amendment to the ordinance to do our already amended. But the language is in your pack or in your sheet. So what we're going to do is change the name from animal control officer to animal services officer.
We like the wording better.
And
We're
it's
not trying to
already-
control things. We
Yeah.
want to give us service, not control.
And then one adoption of a fee, that there was a conflict between the schedule that we had, the schedule and the code, so that's in there too.
Okay.
We felt pretty confident you'd like that change.
Yeah, it's good.
Our point is this policy, we're going to get these animals back known as soon as possible, not unknown pound in town where you see it.
We're ready for introduction. 3.1 introduction to animal services.
Yeah. So good segue. As directed by council, we're ready to stand up animal services July 1st. We've been running hard and fast, Justin and the rest of the team in the city to get it done. But first and foremost, I'd like to introduce a couple new employees, and by that have Chief Reyes step in here real quick. We'll meet Charlotte Finstermaker and Debbie Pedersen. Chief? So our new animal services unit is structured under the administration division, which is currently run by Chief Reyes, and I'd like to give him the opportunity to introduce his new employees.
So thanks for having us. I talked to you guys a little bit last meeting about our animal services unit that we're bringing, and getting the light out of my face here. We talked about our recruiting efforts and trying to bring some officers here that were going to fit our culture very well and bring a wealth of talent and ability. And I think we were successful in that. We were able to hire 2. Debbie Pedersen comes to us from South Salt Lake. She will be our coordinator over our unit. She has almost 17 years experience in animal services, where she served as a supervisor for South Salt Lake and has a lot of networking connections with adoptions and different donors that will help us support our program. And then many of you probably know Charlotte Finstermaker. She came to us from Parks. We stole her from Wendy, and prior to that, Charlotte also developed some experience in animal services down in Springville, where she served for almost 7 years. So I think we were really fortunate in recruiting these 2 and stealing them away, even though we stole her. I don't even see Wendy. Oh, there she is.
She's the one glaring at you from the corner.
Yeah, we're sorry. But we were super fortunate, and I'll turn the time over a little bit and let these guys introduce themselves.
Debbie, and I was with South Salt Lake for just over 16 years. I also have about 35 years in the veterinary technician field that I started long ago and worked even in emergency veterinary medicine while being an animal control officer. I lived in Herriman up till 3 years ago, so a little late on that. I recently moved out to Erda, so have 6 kids ranging from 28 to 12, and then of course all my 4-legged critters too.
Charlotte?
Charlotte, most of you do know me already. I grew up in Utah County, so up here's still learning curve for me, and I didn't even know where Herriman was up until 2 years ago. Now I am most grateful for the fact that I do know where it is, because it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, is accepting a job out here. So I currently live in West Jordan. I have a daughter who is 7 and an incredible boyfriend. And I am super excited to be part of this. Animal control was one of the favorite and best jobs that I ever had, and I've been looking forward to getting back into it ever since. So when this opportunity came up, especially to be in Herriman, I just felt like a blessing was created. Prayer was answered, but different terminology. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic.
Okay, thanks.
We're happy to have you guys. Thank you very
So,
much.
if I could just follow up, take a couple more minutes to introduce you to the new animal services truck, Councilman.
While he's passing out, I wanted to comment about the officers that they just hired. When you hear like Debbie, 17 years with South Salt Lake, that's the type of person he's looking forward to attract. And respectfully, South Salt Lake did not want to let her go very easily. And that says to her ability and who she is, so we're very excited about that. And Charlotte, when she actually moved up this way and kind of worked parks, and according to staff meeting, she asked, says, well, when are you gonna do your animal services? This is probably over a year ago. Yeah. And one thing I've learned from my counselor is I never say never about anything. You never know. So.
Full of surprises,
But,
among other things.
I need to let you know, this has been again, an emotional journey. It's just 2 more employees, but you have changed their lives. And, they come by leap of faith. To take a risk at us to do this new venture. First time you struck with animal services. I honestly tell you, when they have interviewed these 2 candidates and go through the process, they were very emotional about coming here and doing the service for our community. I mean, any more than that, emotions are emotions, and it's just an ongoing thing. We keep talking about our culture, and I'll talk about that later on tonight as well, my team updates.
For all of our directors in the room, I think Charlotte's comment that accepting a job in Herriman was the best decision to provide that. That speaks volumes, so, I mean, I think that's kudos to everybody in the culture that's been done, so, awesome.
So we, once again, experienced a lot of fantastic people putting in for the job, which just tells me that everybody wants to come to work for Herriman. It's been a Herculean task, and I hand it over to Cody and Brian and Chad have just done an amazing job with Justin and Monty and the rest of it. Couldn't have been pulled off like we did, but once again, we have amazing people coming to work here, and we're starting up with all this experience. So we're very happy for that. Now Monday, which is the start date, and I'll turn some time over to Tammy. We have some things planned for that afternoon,
Or
right?
Monday.
Okay.
Yes, so what we would like to do is in the morning, we'll be kind of taking some film of our animal services officers coming on shift, getting prepared, loading up their truck and driving off into the community, and pushing out that welcome for them and letting the community know that they are out there ready to serve. That afternoon, we are going to invite the public into our lobby to welcome them as well, and we will have cake and ice cream. We did something similar during the Police Department Appreciation Week, and it was a big hit with the community, so we want to do it again on Monday to welcome the animal services officers and let the community come in and get to know each of them. And we'll be pushing that out through this week, and again, giving reminders on Monday for everybody to come and join us for that. So it should be good.
And just to touch again, this truck is on its way. So right now we'll be using a couple surplus trucks that will dress up to look exactly like that. But our new one should be here very soon. Again, as Brett pointed out, we're going to services instead of control. These are 2 officers that are in our community their entire shift. They're not other places waiting to come here or responding as needed. Our drive is to be certainly community oriented in getting the dogs and cats and different animals back to their owners versus shelter care. So we're even going to be doing things in the field that are heavily programmed, such as licensing and giving the locator tags.
Microchips.
The microchips, yeah. And doing those things in the field and being able to take care of that right then and there for the folks that are coming in. Live traps, instead of them coming to pick them up, they'll send in a request and our officers will go and deliver them and show them how to use them. So we're very excited. I think we're in a great place and ready to go. Thanks for having the faith in us. We knew we could pull it off.
Thanks for pulling it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions
Can
for
we
us?
take a deep breath for a while?
Good job, but we'll see you on that 15-minute challenge, 15-day challenge.
Next up.
Awesome.
Tammy,
So-
what's
Cody, we have
the
15
timing
days.
for the Monday afternoon?
So we keep you breath.
So right now, we're kind of debating right now between 2 and 3. We're kind of trying to work with everybody's schedules, so we'll have that time
Somewhere around
finalized
that
by
time frame.
tomorrow, and then
Okay,
we'll push it out.
We're gonna try and figure out how we can get the most officers in
Yeah.
and see how that would meld into with the city. So,
Thank you.
very exciting. Any other questions about it? Well,
Excited.
we're in great
Excited
hands.
for another great launch.
Yeah,
Very exciting, so.
another great launch that saves money. We like
Yep.
that.
Better serves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, good to go. 3.2, Parks and Recreation Month Proclamation and Review. Wendy.
So July is National Parks and Recreation Association month. We get a whole month, not just a week, which is awesome.
Kinda needy.
It is, I know. But it's because the public loves what we do, right? So next month we've planned some activities. Those were all in your packet. And one thing that did not make the list was the Herriman Night at the Movies, which will be July 30th. We hope to have a ribbon cutting at Arches on July 30th as well, so that's going to be a busy night. And then also just an FYI, August 2nd, we hope to have our Creek Ridge Park ribbon cutting. We have a lot going on in Parks and Rec. It's a great month, and we're excited to celebrate. Any questions?
No, but when I was doing interviews for youth council, a lot of it, we said, if you could bring one thing to Herriman, what would it be? And a lot of them said, more activities, and I was like, oh my. We're winning, we're dead, we have to do more activities.
Bring them on. We'll do as many as they will come to. So,
And we just need to
Good
make sure
job.
that we know.
appreciate that.
Come to them all.
Yeah.
So the
Any
proclamation
calendar
is in the
invites
consent
for this.
agenda for tonight, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. 3.3, discussion of proposed text change the land development code to allow cannabis production as a conditional use. Michael?
Thank you. Do we have a remote?
Yeah, do you wanna pass that down?
I believe we
The
mentioned
first question
this.
to answer is, why are we talking
Why-
about
why are we
this, right?
doing
That's
this?
gonna be the first question all of that we especially get.
So, the state of Utah has updated their code to allow for cannabis production. They have also mandated that if a city has manufacturing or agricultural zones, we need to allow them within specific zones in our city. We're permitting them as a conditional use. We have proposed in the packets.
Sorry, Michael, so my answer to somebody who asked me that is that state
It's a
code
state
requires-
mandate, yeah, it's a state mandate. Now, the state will still be doing licensing, they will do background checks, they'll do a criminal background check. They will require an annual renewal, and the state also will be limiting the number of permits that they're issuing statewide. I believe it's 10. And they will, if they have more applications than they have permits, they have the ability to interview those applicants. So it's definitely a two-step process. It's a state regulated, state licensed, but we still need to do our land use review. It'll go through a conditional use process. I don't know how typical, whether or not we would likely, if we received an application, if it would be an indoor facility of this type. But just, for reference. And we are relying on all of the definitions that are in state code. So we're making sure that we're consistent with the state regulations. And then these are the list of conditions or standards that we would review an application by, and those are all listed in your packet. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission as an amendment to our land use development regulations, and they did give you a positive recommendation on adopting this. in a future meeting. Of course, this is just on your agenda for discussion. And these are the two zones that we are proposing to place them in again as a conditional use, the A1 and the M1.
Any questions?
I think it just puts us in compliance with what we need to be in compliance with.
Alright. Move on, 3.4, discussion relating to land development code amendment permit A25.
Okay, so this has been, you can just keep that same presentation. This has been a long time in coming, I believe. We have had interest in bringing back some form of larger lot residential development in our agricultural areas. And in discussing this issue with the Planning Commission, they were interested in bringing back the 8.25 with a number of changes. We essentially are reducing the density that's allowed within the 8.25 from the former code. And we're doing that by removing a number of optional provisions that would potentially add density. So here you can see that previously it was a range between 2.5 and 2.8. So we're removing that line and we're saying that the new maximum is 2.5 per acre. We're removing these tools from the density bonus criteria.
It's 2.5, I thought the thing said 2.1, maybe I was too late at night when I read it. What's the maximum density?
2.5. Now,
1.8 is 2.5, right? It starts at 1.8, right?
Bryn?
Yeah.
It does, there is
Yeah.
still a range, okay. The
Which
maximum
again,
is 2.5.
The maximum.
2.5. For those that are watching, that doesn't mean 2.5 houses per, that's.
2.5 units per gross
Take out
acre.
the streets and utilities, et cetera, and you're talking a lot less.
You know, as we've discussed some of our
Oh, that's
master
just an
plan
example, that's why I
communities,
read
there has been some talk about maybe changing our density model from a gross to a net. So for example, if we were to convert this over to a net, we would just simply identify that the minimum area for a quarter acre lot is a quarter acre. You know, you'd be about 11,000 square feet plus per lot. So anyway, that may be something we want to look at in the future, but this seemed to meet our immediate concerns, and it did receive Planning Commission recommendation of approval for you.
This is just for discussion tonight, right?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we gave some direction, obviously, to get this back. We've had a prolonged time without this available or anything of the like in there, and I'm gonna look at a little bit more, but so far I've liked the recommendations that have been brought forward by the Planning Commission in terms of how to take out some of those things that gave some bonus density and really tapering that down, because I think that was the concern that existed before is, you start with this baseline and then you start adding all these little things that was able to accelerate the amount of density on there, and then we just didn't end up with, I think, what ultimately was the product and the feel that we wanted in those areas.
Yeah. It became confusing both for the public and the development community, to be honest.
For an agricultural residential
Correct.
area,
Yeah.
I think that kind of sums it up, went beyond what we thought.
I thought so too, even when it first was implemented, when we were making the changes to all the master plan and we went through everything, it was like 1.8 and it was like, well, it's gonna be difficult to get past 1.8, and as soon as you blinked your eye, it was not difficult to get
It's
past.
2.7.
It was right up to the very
Yeah.
maximum as fast as it could get, so we just have to change that culture, because I don't think that that's really where we want it to go. We want to.
Well, and really, this zoning applies to a handful of pockets.
Yeah.
That are residual, that are remaining, where some of those people come in and say, well, I want half my 5 acres to develop. I can't qualify for any of those bonuses anyway, we need to know how to do this, so.
Yeah, and the title really was low density agricultural, so we need to stay in harmony with that idea. And a lot of these butt up to, like high country per se, 5 acre minimums and stuff like that. So it's just so appropriate to make sure there's some sort of a buffer zone, a larger transition into those larger lots.
Appreciate the Planning Commission's work.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, can we skip the next one?
Be a fun night without talking about McKeeston.
3.5, the Keystone Road project discussion, Blake.
Presentation.
Well, the coroner got paid anyway. Woo-hoo!
Piece by piece, that's why that road's been. So I'm just gonna kinda, oh, am I still in it?
Oh my gosh.
Just go ahead and open it, it should be fine. Okay, so, I just kinda wanted to show a timeline to see where we're at. Things were marching along really good. And then we hit March and had a couple of meetings and our negotiations stalled. And that's where we're at today. We're stalled, so we're coming to the council to get some direction on how to move forward with where we're at. Where we're
This
at,
is what happens every time at this very moment and same time.
this is not an unfamiliar position.
Great.
Not options for you.
So, just to remind everybody, here's where the project is, here's what it looks like. We went through and the council directed staff to move forward with this modified cross-section because it is a special case. That was to minimize some impacts and to really limit the number of curb cuts we'd have and stuff along here. And so, that's what it looks like. This map here shows where we're at with the properties. So for the legend, the blue properties are properties that need to be acquired. And the green properties are properties that are going to be released back to those adjacent properties. We don't need that right away anymore because of the narrowing down to the modified cross-section. And then that black line looks like it slid, but it should be up on it's just flipped on those. So the black line is property that we have determined as dedicated by use per state statute. So, I was gonna have handouts for you. I've zoomed in so you can see the red properties are the ones we're having a tough time with.
So I thought that there was only one property owner that
That's
had
what I
to
thought.
send their deed.
So we'll get into it. When we get back to the presentation. One property is about 1,500 square feet, the one that we've had the issue with. The other two, the people have been totally good to work with, and they're closer to like 400 square feet, 400 and 700. So,
Just do this.
Sorry.
Click on your clicker and see if it'll
This is your connection.
pull her back, because
it's like you change screens or something.
So option number one is what we've done before and say, all right, well, if they're not willing to cooperate, then there's nothing we can do. One or the other.
So what happens is the one property that we're having the major issue with, there's about, I think there's 230 feet of frontage, but about 100 feet of that is paved already with curb and gutter. So there's only a piece that isn't, but there's no sidewalk along any of it. So that one we'd have to look at and see, oh, here we are, we're back.
You can try it on.
We'll start over.
Yep, it's gonna start over.
Maybe it's going kind of slow. Okay, so yeah, the three red properties are the ones that are significant acquisitions. That's the only reason they're red, but we'll get into this. So the first one was the one furthest to the west. I'm just going to march east to west on these ones because that's based on size. So you can see it's 1,529 square feet that we need to acquire. That is what was determined. It's really like 4,000 square feet.
So if the 1529 is
That takes out
after
the part that
public
was deeded by
hearing.
use. Yep. You got 207 feet of total frontage, 74 of it's been improved already with curb gutter and asphalt. And so to think about this, if you went through and did the full improvements, it's zoned A1. He's only got 2.5 acres, so without a rezone, he could only get one flag lot off that road. So something to consider as we go through it. So that's that one parcel right there. And that's the one that he has stated that he wants compensation for his land, and improvements don't constitute compensation. Okay, the second property is next to that. This one has full curb gutter and asphalt along it, just doesn't have sidewalk. It's 763 square feet of property that isn't the roadway. And this is also zone A1, but as you can see, the way the house is set in there in the sheds, he would never get a flag lot on that without tearing down houses and sheds. Parcel 3 on the end, this one's already part of a subdivision. He's only got 1.18 acres. He's zoned A1, so he's where he's at. And he has full improvements except for sidewalk in front of him as well.
What's the square footage that we would need for sidewalk?
This is 400 square feet. We actually already have the deed signed by this property owner right here. But if we make a decision to go back and purchase tonight, then I would want to go back to all the property owners that I said I couldn't buy property from them and offer them the same deal. I think that would be fair. Because when they were signing these easements, I said the council's directed me to not purchase property and the properties in lieu of the road improvements. And everyone but one was like, okay, sounds good, sounds fair to me. So, here's our options. Our current status, we're stalled. The owner has said that road improvements are not acceptable form of compensation. He wants to know, he paid for the property cash, he wants cash back, I guess, or something very like, not like cash that doesn't look like asphalt, concrete. So, if you had a no right-of-way purchase option, that kind of limits us, and we'd have to either do nothing and stop the project and not move forward, or we could leave out improvements along the parcels that we couldn't acquire. So if there was one parcel there, we'd leave out the curb gutter, we'd leave the asphalt short, we'd just pave to the edge of the existing road. And then we'd have some issues with stormwater, we'd have to come in and modify our design a bit to add a couple of stormwater.
Let me ask you this, is there any, because it seems like we already can do curb gutter asphalt on everything, because it's been driven on. Is there anything that we can't do curb gutter and asphalt in?
You wouldn't be able to put curb and gutter in without acquiring a little bit of property, because the road's only
But are you sure?
25 feet wide.
Have you driven out there where people drive? Because people drive and then have to turn back in to miss the curb. I guarantee you, because when the bumps are really bad, that's where everyone drives.
Well, and you'd have the curb there, so I don't know, I'd have to look at it, but from everything that Sunrise has put together for us, it appeared that we would need that right away for at least part of the curb and the sidewalk.
Okay.
Because those exhibits kind of show it.
Kind of help on that, because we're taking it by use, like, it's difficult, we'd be challenged by the ombudsman taking property too far into the property, even if people maybe parked on the shoulder or whatever, we think this is where we're secure in our taking by use. If we start encroaching, I think we run a risk of being accused of being too aggressive with that policy. So that's the issue. We can sit down and debate what we think.
The other
taking by use
documents we have for signature for these people out here are a temporary construction easement and a public utility easement, which is 10 feet in to the properties beyond this line. And so, yeah, Gordon's right. If we just go out and build it, we'll still need an easement to get into their property a bit to build that road. Because we'll disturb back beyond.
Sure.
There'll be elevation differences we'll have to tie back in.
Sure, makes sense.
So, those are the two options I could really come up with without purchasing right away. If we did purchase right away, it opens up some opportunities. There's some partial or temporary improvements that if you really wanted to not have the property owner have everything in for them so they'd be ready to develop, you could put a rolled asphalt curb or something like that, and a temporary asphalt walkway. It'd still cost us money, but it would cost them money too when they go to develop. You could do the full improvements and just say that's a cut our losses and we've got the road done and we've moved on. And then there's some legal options that John can talk about a lot better than I can that we discussed earlier today.
Sure, there's three of them. A protection strip, which I don't think will work very well, because if we go to condemnation to take it, I don't think the court would let us take anything more than we need for the improvement. You gotta have something for a protection strip, so unless they're gonna voluntarily do it, I don't think it works well. The other way, which is not on here, is UDOT will sometimes condemn accesses to their, when they're taking property by condemnation. I don't think that works real well here because it's not like it's a freeway, it's not like it's Redwood Road where they, limit your access, for example, or Mountain View, but that's a possibility. And then the third way is to have an ordinance that says, we've improved your property and we'll file a notice on your property that when you go to develop it, or you want a new zone, subdivide it, sell the property, you owe some money, and we'll fight about it later.
Me and John visited on all these options throughout the week, trying to figure out what's the best stance. Because we've heard you loud and clear, you like to move forward on the project, you budget for the project. We always hit this wall every time. This is probably, I've lost count over the years how many times we go this far, we get stopped. And every time we have an election, no offense, but it comes back up and we work on it again and it comes to this point and stops again. But I think we found a way that we feel what the third option John pointed out, that we can do combination, go through the process, get the project done right, and not make a mistake and leave that section out, and then make attachment to the property that whatever happens to that property, whether it be sale or subdivide, whatever happens, it comes back to your title report. We feel that gives the other residents that's been willing to sign, something that the city did its due diligence. We didn't just bend over back and pay for it. But there's a process that whatever time will be, it'll come about. And that timeline is, we have Houston, and it'll be the same process we've got to follow because of Gene Road. Staff is very.
And 73, and 6,000, there's so many roads. It's
Okay,
gonna be
stop
the
it,
same
you give me
issue.
a heart attack.
Well, but that's why I wanted, this is not about just McQuiston, it's a much bigger picture. We have other issues in this city that we cannot just keep saying, well, we can't do it.
The staff is very passionate trying to get this done and others done, and we'd like to get one done and then we move on to the next one. So we keep on having this big pile of projects we never seem to get through.
Well, that's
So
part of the
our
issue is we
recommendation
don't
is
wanna,
third option.
we don't wanna create, a set of precedents that allows people to try to
Right.
milk money from the government.
Well, the other
Right.
question is potentially going this route, not only on this road, but future projects, is how much does that increase the cost of the project?
Right.
And what does that mean for impact to potentially other projects as well, now that budget has to increase for whatever timeline that is?
Well, I agree 100% with that, but the problem is, it becomes a safety issue. We can't
No,
just
I'm
keep
not
saying,
disagreeing.
our roads look like bad words in the city because somebody won't leave the right of way. That's why I don't wanna do this condemnation process any more than anyone else wants to do it. I hate that path. But I have almost hit a child on this road myself, and somebody's gonna get hurt. You know what I mean? The problem is there are hundreds of new homes there now. When I moved there, not an issue. Now there are literally hundreds of new homes, times however many children are in those new homes. And that, even if they're not going to school at that school, they're riding their bikes, they're riding their schools, they're walking, people are active. And somebody's gonna get hurt. And I just think then how are we gonna feel when we say, well, it was because this guy wouldn't deed his right away, but it's like, there has to be some responsibility there, do you know what I'm saying? It's like somehow we have to figure out a way to make sure that we can't just get stopped just because somebody doesn't think it's in their best interest. We have to say, but it's in the community's best interest for the safety of the residents. Does that make sense?
Have we got updated numbers then associated with any of these options?
So you're looking between probably $7,000 and $15,000, depending on if all three want us to purchase or if one or two are okay to let us go and exchange.
So,
On this project, we're talking somewhere between seven and 15 is your estimate.
If you're looking at it, the cost of property is typically around $4 to $6 per square foot. That puts you in the $200,000 to $300,000 price range per acre. So that's where everything's going right now, and that's where I calculated it at.
Based on how much square footage you had assessed that we would need to purchase.
Assuming we don't get challenged because of the condemnation, or the dedicated by use portion. I don't know how that's gonna be
So that's my
worked
question for
out.
John, is, I mean, I like the sound of this, but how difficult is it going to be to actually enforce it? Property sales, we say, okay, you owe us $8,000.
It'll be on title.
It'll be untitled.
Title company doesn't like to think those changes unless they settle.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I think about that, that's to me, if I'm a resident, I'm eating away my part, right? And, it's like, it's an easy sell to a resident, to me, if you're thinking about it, they come back and say, yeah, you did deed it. I mean, you did gift it to the city. If you didn't, we could pay you, but we're also gonna slap it on your title. I'm just saying, I don't want the deal to
That's
happen.
whenever property when that happens, is they get the value of, what it costs us to purchase land, which is a hard number. It's filed on the title.
So that, that was my question, is if it's set at that number, or
Yeah.
30 years from now, there's any interest added, because that money takes away from other projects, et cetera.
Well, we could put it in the notice, whatever we wanted to do in the notice. In the ordinance, we get to draft what we want.
But
If you
drag
had to
off that
condemn it-
original number, the more difficult it is to attach it.
So if you had to condemn it, you'd probably pay more in attorney fees than you pay the property owner,
Yeah,
which is just stupid.
yeah, for sure, I agree.
So the steps would be, we would have to draft an ordinance, so this project would be on hold till we come back with an ordinance. You adopt that ordinance, then we would come back and, go through the condemnation. Condemnations have generally taken us about 6 months. We've had 2 and we're 100% successful. That's good news.
So we would have to condemn
have
it,
to.
we
If
would
he
have
would-
to go through the
if they-
We
condemnation.
go back
agree
and
on- they agree on
request
price.
again.
Yeah.
We can go make her try at it.
We can go back and say, we'll pay you
Absolutely.
this much based on market value.
Yep.
And
And
if
if
they
it
sell no, then
if
we
it
have
fails,
to.
then we don't wanna hold up. As you know, and there's a lot of people that have been sensitive to this, that we try to get in this construction cycle, and
Yeah.
it's slipping away from us.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, in order to condemn, one of the requirements is you have to make a good faith effort to acquire the property, so we at least have to talk to him and offer something.
Yeah, for sure.
And once we start that process, we ask the judge to grant us
Immediate
Yeah.
But that's still a 60-day process.
That's 3 or 4 months out.
That's immediate.
Yeah, we'd probably be looking at a springtime
We
deal.
missed the window for
Right, but at least we have
on the edge of
a
it.
move forward path, rather than every
Say this
time
is
we
what's
get to
happening
someplace
every
we get stopped.
The good side, if we have to wait till next spring, take advantage of that early bidding happens in January, you should get a benefit there usually.
Yeah, but honestly, that's one of the frustrating things to me on this project anyways, is we were lined up to do that this year.
Yeah.
And we felt like that we had everything in line to be able to make that happen. And so, right, and so, you know, when you start to talk about good faith efforts, I believe that there has been multiple good faith efforts to address this issue there, and one that we could have had this road already built and taken care of actually a couple of months ago.
It actually got paved yesterday, that's when they did the paving, just so you know.
Is, you know,
And they were behind schedule.
Yeah.
yeah, so, you know, for me, that's, I guess, the challenging and frustrating part about it is as much as all of us want to find resolutions to make this happen, because we know that as a need that needs to be accomplished, it doesn't take much to be able to derail those. One individual can derail that and bring us back to where we're at now, which is, you know, trying to figure out the best option forward in order to still accomplish this. And so that's the part for me that just makes me want to really think this through, what I think is the best way to proceed, knowing that it's going to ultimately, especially if we use this one of these processes moving forward, that it does start to set the precedent on how we address the other projects that we know need to be addressed in our city, and we have limited funds and a lot of issues to be able to address those projects, especially when it comes to transportation. I mean, that is I think, for us, the number one thing that all of us get complaints about.
Well, I think that's the main point for those who might be looking at this saying, oh, it's 715,000, it's not a big deal. Well, then you look at all the other roads
Sure.
that this sets a precedent for, and we're talking about a ton so that we simply don't have for those things. So I'll bet you guys, I'd like to pursue option 3, at least see what the ordinance would look like. I know I'll have several more questions that come up. I'll say my preference, if we go that route, would be to add in a very conservative, just set simple, or not simple, but set interest rate. So that it's not, market driven, et cetera, but something that's just, very low conservative that really can't be argued a whole lot. So when this comes back to future councils 20 years from now, it's the value that's that is. So it's kind of moved at that point. So
Well, we're never
it
gonna-
needs to be real money that we recover.
It's been 2 weeks since we discussed it. We have been talking about at least once a day, every business day, since that time, trying to flush out the pros and cons of every way to get this handled. We've heard your passion, direction to us to try to get it worked out, and this is what we thought our best option is, and we'd like to get moving forward and bring a draft back to you. We'll try to make July 10th soon. We should have something by then, but they may not be told.
Yeah,
I appreciate Sherry's passion.
I like you, feel the pressure we all feel, Joe.
I appreciate Sherry's passion on this because honestly, there's been times along the way for me that the frustration has been so real that everybody in the community knows that these are issues that we need to deal with and that they are safety issues and there's kids and all of those things involved, and that's why we're all looking to find a fix, and we have one person or two or whatever that number is that doesn't want to see it that same way or refuses to see it the same way, and so for me it's probably made me a little more resistant to addressing other options than maybe I otherwise would be, because I think that that's very unfortunate that someone does see an opportunity to benefit, personal benefit. And I want to be fair with everybody. I'm not asking for people to obviously give away things unfairly, but this is a huge safety concern, as Sherry's mentioned, and that part is the frustrating. So I appreciate Sherry continuing to, I guess, push me probably along the way. And I think we have some good options to consider, and I would at this point be supportive of option 3 as well, at least continuing down that road to see what that looks like.
and I agree, and I sat and racked my brains too. It's like, what other kind of things? And I think that we are Herriman, right? And I think that we are full of a community of great people. And not to say that if they don't want to do it, they're not good people. That's not what I'm alluding to. But there's just going to be some people who just don't understand that picture.
The big picture.
But I don't think that it will say that now everybody wants you to pay for it. I just think that if we present it and say we'd like you to beat it, we're willing to come in and do these, here's the benefit financially to you, because it is a financial benefit.
Absolutely.
It increases your property value, for heaven's sakes, not to mention it's just a financial benefit, it definitely does. And the difference between the improvements and the land value on a typical setting is a wash. So you're getting paid for it, but there are just gonna be some people that just don't see it that way. And so I think there needs to be some sort of an option. I think we should continue to approach people and ask them to deed, just like I'm deeding mine, right? Because it's the
Well, I
right
think
thing to
this
do.
option allows us to do that and basically tell those people who have deeded it that, look, whenever this property is sold, whether it's now or 50 years from now, they're gonna pay it
You're
back.
gonna pay it back.
So they're pretty much giving it as well. But
Yeah.
this is the way we have to move forward.
Exactly.
And very much appreciate those that have been willing to help work with us in
Way
this process. To help, help accomplish some of these, us addressing some of these safety concerns that we know exist.
Yeah. Good job. Thanks for putting so much time into it. Appreciate it. Showing some legalities.
Better direction again, I'll see how far I go.
You ready to move on? 3.6, discussion related to development of residential properties owned by Suburban Land Resort.
So, I'm gonna give a little introduction, and we have Steve here with, Steve Maddox with Edge Homes, and he's gonna finish it up, so, I think it's do the other PowerPoint first.
Oh, that's the one you took in the work.
I know, there's one more in the work for you. Keep that one up and go to it next, or you can show it now.
This one? Okay.
mine is 2 slides, so it's really important you see this. I just wanted to show these parcels so that you could kind of visualize where that, so maybe that helps better. The whole city, so SLR owns 2 substantial parcels. There's one out here by 118th, one over here by 134, excuse me, and 138. Yeah, sorry. And so they're right now working on developing this property. They gave a presentation to the planning commission of some of the things they wanted to do, and so we wanted you to see what's being proposed and give us direction as we move forward with them. So go ahead and go to the other PowerPoint now, and then I'm going to turn it over to Steve. Shelley,
One of the best ever from you.
Yes. So Steve will kind of lead into some of the things they're looking at with this property. They're starting to develop this in conjunction with the property in Riverton. So there's a little bit of discussion on that as well.
It's gonna be hard to top that presentation, but I'll do my best, so don't bear with me, Mike. A couple of items we presented, or I presented last week to Planning Commission. I think some of the feedback was we've had a lot of fancy pictures and we've had a lot of fancy presentations over the year, and what we actually get is different than what we were presented. I am the end user. I am the individual that will be giving the keys to the homeowner, and I am the individual that will be taking this from this discussion to construction and see this through to the very end. And so this is not a project that I will be presenting fancy pictures to council and then trying to sell this to an end user. This will be something in an MDA that will not be ambiguous, and there will not be obscurity in what we are presenting. It will be factual, and it will be recorded, and it will be part of the plan. So I wanted to just be crystal clear with what our objective is. The next item regarding SLR, Dan is not able to be here tonight. Steve Romney, that oversees the Department of SLR, has set some standards for us. Everything that we are going to be doing is going to be part of their approval process and ultimately be with Bishop Davies. So this has been given priority to make sure that this does not have some of the issues that other projects have had. We became acquainted with a firm, a design firm called Loci. It's a team that most recently has done the special project in Saratoga Springs, the Temple project, and the design of the entire breadth and width of the 800 acres that they are doing there, and then Daybreak. So we have brought people in that are significantly more equipped to be able to handle the design aspect and the architectural aspect above and beyond anything that we have done as a company. One of the concerns that my partner and I have argued about for about 9 months is the byways in most of the municipalities that we build in. And it consists of asphalt, curb, a mild park strip or hardscape, a couple of trees, a sidewalk, a hardscape wall of some kind, and then the backs of homes. And that's what this road was turning out to be. The road that will be heading from 134th clear through the high school has been named by both municipalities, and that became a racetrack in our mind. So Sherry, when you're talking about life safety, I saw 2,000 individuals that have not matured. Frontal lobes have not matured. I have several of them. And that is a straight road, and it is a wide road, and it is a speed road, and it had racked our brains on how. So we went back with Loci. We met with staff here. We met with staff at Riverton. Blake elbowed me in the throat and said, "This is done. We are building it." And so we began looking for options, and that kind of became the paramount focus of the project of how can we long-term, short-term, without speed bumps. With Brett said no speed bumps, and we looked at speed humps, and then we looked at a lot of different things, and we just couldn't come up with a solution. So that was kind of how we started. Then we went back to, if you can, I actually have this mic, sorry. We came back to the vision of the city, and we, as a builder, feel the need on this particular piece, which may be one of the last large parcels within the city of Herriman, to figure out what the vision of the city is, long-term, short-term. We understand that there are concerns from residents, there are concerns statewide of housing affordability, density, and all of these issues wrapped up, but there are also family household formations and businesses coming into the state every day. So we wrapped all of this up and got a migraine and then kind of went to work. So this is the scope of the project, which is the wheel line. We are essentially landlocked with Mountain Ridge High School on the south, and then we go to 134th Mountain View corridor, and then we have a canal on the other side. We are flanked almost right down the middle with Riverton City, of which we will be building a road and connecting on a Mountain View corridor. We also were told by the state that Mountain View corridor would be a freeway in the imminent future. Funding is going to be made available. Mountain View corridor, as we know it now.
Did you get any commitments from them?
Well, I'm being told those will be frontage roads that we're currently driving on, and the freeway will be in the center section. And I'll bring some artwork that we can all look at and say maybe it'll turn out that way, maybe it won't turn out that way. This was the conceptual design. On the north, there's a commercial parcel that is a challenge in a lot of different fronts, just as far as accessibility. We're fairly limited to pork chops, meaning right in, right out, and then the access road of the north-south connector. We have commercial that is zoned, as you can see, as we come into the Herriman portion, and then of course the high school, and then we have the elementary school and the seminary building. It has become very apparent through staff, particularly Gordon, who is very passionate about determining what stormwater and where it's going. Blake has also taken on the objective of figuring out what stormwater is doing. The high school has kind of come in and said, this is where we're building, the road is in, and there's no storm drain outfall. We reached an agreement a week ago with SLR that we have essentially contained the water on site. We're doing a temporary basin until we figure it out long term and have this done. That agreement, I believe, was ratified yesterday, and we have some breathing room for stormwater. So we're going to get it right rather than get it done fast. This is essentially the layout. There's a couple of things that I want to point out, and that is that we have some mixed uses within the project. On the east side, there's what we're referring to as the Emerald Necklace. That's the right-of-way that Blake has requested for stormwater that is essentially collected on everything south of this project. It will be channeled to and through our first park, and then to and through Riverton City, and then eventually dumped into Rose Creek. This will free up all of the basins that are south of this, which will be turned into park space and open space, and will not be filled up with residential housing.
What's the current location then for the temporary drain water then that's proposed to be constructed?
So we're looking, there's a little pond right here. We're enlarging that pond. It'll be a year, and then our understanding is that agreement will expire within a year. We'll have to have that solution within 1 year.
Interestingly enough, there's a temporary solution for an occupancy permit on the seminary building. So there's a harmonious reason to have this resolved for a lot of different reasons. But what we didn't want to do was something that we would have to tear up and or put in the middle of a community. And it was a very temporary fix, so there's breathing room currently. One of the items that we are strongly passionate about is green space. I met with Trent at Riverton City. We have brokered and are beginning the writing of how to control water that is Herriman's water, stormwater that will be going through Riverton City. So that will be property that will be deeded to Herriman, maintained by Herriman, access to and through Herriman, and the water situation that has been critical will now be solved by this last leg of the green space, and will also be maintained as a trail corridor for the future. So I think we're...
I thought we have to, what's the new state mandate on, we have to keep what percentage of it in our city if we're generating it?
You have the 90th percentile storm that you have to retain, but that's all at the development.
Yeah.
All this water is after it leaves.
Not on the city?
It's not a city standard.
Okay.
And that's not formally passed yet by the state.
One of the items that we are also implementing is 3 LDS chapel locations, stake center locations. 2 of those will be in Riverton, 1 of those will be in Herriman. That will be contiguous with the junior high, elementary school. And then we have a couple of pocket parks throughout the project. We've got a 10-acre park that we will be dedicating as a programmable space where sporting events could happen. We have essentially two-sided access to the park, which Mike has been a proponent of having parks out in the open for safety, but also parallel parking for the weekends. And then we have a 5-acre park that we plan on doing more of a meditation and or hammock park and or non-screaming competitive park. It will be significantly different. And then we will take the 4 corners right there and turn those into green space as a slowing mechanism. That, I think, Blake, will be a 4-way stop, but we certainly want to accentuate what we're doing there. This is the Fearless new Sentinel Ridge high school mascot. The Boulevard will also be named this. We have, I believe, brokered permission from both municipalities to have the signage that will be on this road identical in nature. We won't identify it as Herriman or Riverton. It will be designated as this logo within the sign. Hopefully we can get emergency services to subscribe to the signage that we're doing for safety issues, but we will have that through the entire corridor from north to south. If you were standing at that 4-way intersection looking north or looking south, what we have come up with is referred to as a slip road. We are moving the residents off of Sentinel, and we are creating a boulevard there that will be slowed through native vegetation and additional vegetation that we will be doing, and then we will be having homes that actually front rather than back and controlling the traffic to the center lane. So this is the cross section that is proposed in the center section. The slip lanes will be part of our development that will remove residents from backing onto, but certainly still that calming effect of what we'll be doing. So this will be a private lane. The front of the homes will be adjacent to that slip road. I put my trailer there on the driveway so that people can see that this will be a traditional neighborhood. Sherry, you talked about safety. We'll be able to move the kids well off of the boulevard. They will be in front of the residential. They will actually be able to walk and talk and enjoy their sidewalk away from the busy street. One of the items that has been a vision of the state is mass transportation. The center section that has been developed will allow the center section that's currently a suicide lane to be able to be turned into light rail. We are proposing through low-size, I think, innovation from here on out to scrap this profile and go to a green space, which would be maintained by the HOA and or the city. I had them enlarge this center section, but if we went to the same cross section as this and not had green space on the side, then we could accommodate this green look in addition to a 4-lane, 2-lane on each one.
So I have a couple comments about this. I was at an event yesterday, and there was a woman that lived over in this area already extremely concerned about exactly this. This tracks coming through a neighborhood and right to a high school where those 2,000 individuals you talked about may or may not know how to navigate trains. She felt like this was a very dangerous place to put a track train in the middle of a residential area. And if I look at this, what this means to me is little kids can go play on the grass. If I'm a little kid and I'm out, I might run over and play on that grass and not understand the danger of it being a train. That's just, I don't mean to, I mean, it looks pretty, but that would be maybe a con to doing it that way. It would be concerning to me that it might be enticing to play on, go kick your soccer ball when the train's not coming, kind of thing.
Hopefully it's not counted.
Yeah, so this is what it will be built as.
Right.
This is fairly traditional. In the event that the state decides that we need a connection within here, the road cross-section would be suitable. If this is less enticing for our 12-year-old, 8-year-old children, and there's not adequate space, then certainly we are not going to insist. I think it's something that is a softer scape. You certainly could put fencing in place that would make it absolutely inconvenient for a child to get to and through. And I'm not confident that it would actually look this lush and green and enticing on our hot 90-degree days. So
I'm just passing
I don't disagree. I think the connection of mass transportation is inevitable. I think it's inevitable in this particular area. I don't know when funding will be made available, but as we continue to be concerned about transportation, congestion, etc., I think that this is a long-term solution that the state will look toward.
And I guess that's the key point for those that are gonna comment to us later, don't put it there, we don't get to decide that, they don't get to decide that.
That's correct,
The
Jared.
state's gonna decide at some point, I can't tell you in 4 years and 2 years before that, coming in as a resident sitting here, how many pretty pictures I've seen that included tracks in it, said Herriman Station here. None of this is on any of UDOT or UTA or anybody's plans, like it doesn't appear anywhere, so, but preserving the right of way and having the option.
So that the discussion of taking land from residents doesn't come up, the plan is in place, the cross-section is in place in Herriman City.
That was
controls
my
the dirt.
comment, is preserving some type of corridor right of way is the single biggest thing that as a community we can do is to plan ahead for the future because of how costly it becomes down the road to have to do just as you talked about, and that is taking structures and property and those from other people. So while we don't know if or when that will happen, at least we have the foresight to be able to plan ahead and preserve something that could accommodate that in the future. As I agree that sooner or later, sometimes this transit option out here is inevitable.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a must.
And it's not in somebody's front yard, it's not in somebody's backyard. Not everybody's going to want this, there's going to be this, but I think at the end of the day, it will. And what did you, I didn't
For
catch
the
your
road
comment.
itself, I love the slip line.
Okay.
Oh, me too.
Okay.
Too, and I didn't mean to derail your
No,
presentation. It was
derail, and
a
this is
comment
fantastic.
that was made, and
No.
I'm like,
No, and again, we are here saying, please, this is something that we meet about every Friday morning with staff and are trying to look for any idea and not just do traditional and not just do what I described at the beginning.
And in fact, I'd like to explore the feasibility of doing this in other areas, because really we're gonna end up with like some of our neighboring cities where we just have alleyways, right? We've got roads with 8-foot concrete walls, and we've just got tons.
So I was called out by one of our builders on a townhome that we built off of Mountain View corridor, and we had frozen bunnies that had been, by Brett's team, flung through our windows on a cold day where snow was being cleared. And I thought to myself, there's gotta be a better way for me. Like, I have to evolve. This was one of those that I felt like, when the light bulb went on, that this is an opportunity. We can catch snow on those little alleyways, we've got snow in the middle, we're planning for the future, and we're creating a walkable, livable community, and yet we're putting a major boulevard through a project. So we're accomplishing, I think, a lot of objectives here. The cost of this, if you ask the question, Jared, is double. It really is double. So it comes down to the reason people haven't done it is economics. I think that we have a unique opportunity here to accomplish that.
yeah, I like it too, just like you said, even safety wise, having kids walking down that boulevard on the sidewalk even versus a little back further in where cars are gonna be slower, yeah, it's way nice.
One of the questions from Planning Commission is, what if traffic is backed up and people decide to take the slip road? In my experience, when I try to merge into traffic, it takes me longer. And those are private, so if I wanna do speed humps or anything like unto that, those are gonna be slow-mo, throughout the whole project.
But those will be owned by them, so they'll maintain and take care of it. So it's a
Yeah,
great deal.
we as an HOA wanna maintain all open space, roadways, byways, and absorb that so that the level is done to the standard of which we leave it at. The slip roads would begin here and end down here at the high school. They would be incorporated along our east-west corridor. They would be in front of chapel sites, they would be in front of parks. We would incorporate that through the entire project. One of the objectives of doing this was not to have a line. The property line is right down the middle of this road. Half the road will be owned by Riverton, half will be owned by Herriman. The connectivity between communities, the architecture through communities, the streetscape through communities, the additional 10 park here, which will be a public park, our combination of about 12 acres down here. There will not be a burden that one city will bear more than the other, and we will program that space so that it's not redundancy. So we will be able to determine what the uses are there. We will begin working on SLR on a theming for our entryway here. We as a company do not badge our communities. You will not see Edge anywhere on signs or marquees. This will all be of the logo that will be redundant here on the high school. This parcel remains commercial. This park here will be public. This one will be public. And then Bryn Park here, the 1 acre park down here will also be perhaps a public park if I could convince the Parks Department to take a 1 acre park. I'm not convinced of that. So this will be a green byway, which will be part of the trail corridor, which will be hopefully 37 miles in connectivity at some point. We are not going to impede that. We will have a trail corridor through there, and I think once again that we will be able to pull children off of this and move them to the east, and theoretically citizens could take this all the way out to 134th, where we will have an intersection. One of the challenges that we will have is how to get our citizens across 134th. Trent is open to ideas. We've talked about cat eyes. I would look to the police department to figure out what the best way to remediate this. We talked about even doing a catwalk above and over and to and through. So with Center Cal and the abundance of commercial on that side, I think it's fairly clear that that will be the traffic corridor for students, both walking and or driving. So,
What's that?
so what we're told is that kids don't want to climb the stairs or the ramp or tubes, so they run across the street. I'm open to all suggestions, and I think Trent is as well at this point, and it's really something Riverton City is going to have to grapple with. So this is the layers that we are adding to this from when I was in front of you a couple of weeks ago. We continue to give low side challenges, and we're moving and nudging and pushing, and the objective here is to meet the vision of the city and to be able to address those things. But main focus that we had is the speed of the boulevard, and I think we've addressed that in a way that I didn't see happening when we came before you weeks ago. So.
What's that?
The whole chunk right there is commercial, right?
So what we'd like to do as we move forward is just kind of get some ideas from the council. Are we looking at something that the council's interested in? Is this something that, certainly our standard doesn't have slip ramps, but we thought those were pretty exciting, so you're not staring at any kind of walls going down the street. It just is such a unique, refreshing approach to things that would be great if it was everywhere, and we got every developer to do that. They want to do the HOA to maintain it. That was kind of a good preference for us because we've maintained the actual road and own the right of way. They would maintain those. And the city would maintain the 2 large parks. They have a number of green spaces in their projects that they'd maintain. Initially, Steve had some houses in here and Bryn criticized him profusely, and that's why it became Bryn's Park. And so if we get a Bryn's Park, we should maintain it, but that's another story. We won't talk about that here today. So that's kind of the steps we're looking at. We just thought it'd be worthwhile to talk to you before any more. They put a lot of work and some thought to this, so we want to make sure we got that.
Sounds like the one technical issue that's been taken care of is the stormwater.
Yeah.
It's for on a temporary basis, so the schools can do.
They were really helpful with that. That was good.
Yeah, I'm just going through my notes and everything we just talked to. Conceptually, the pretty pictures are nice, and I like the idea of the slip road. I think it's a great tool to use.
Well, and honestly, that was one of my concerns too, having that large boulevard going down through there is again, that, going back to the vision, the look and feel of what that would be, and again, that customarily we have put the backs of houses to that, obviously you don't want them fronting on there, but that just creates such a unpleasant feel as you're, traveling through there, so I appreciate you listening to the concerns.
Even with snow removal on those sidewalks in the back, they don't happen.
Yeah.
Right, it might be a day or two, and this is going to be in front of homes, out of sight, out of mind is how we looked at all those corridors.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, and with your career, like, for this to just move people off of that.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, though, for us to not look at stucco backs, because even if we put a 6-foot wall in there and some berms and some landscaping, ultimately on a 2-story home, that is your streetscape,
Absolutely.
mentally.
Absolutely. So I appreciate the work to this point, the innovative thought process that you've been through to try and incorporate, I think, some of the things that are important to us. So Like I say, I still think that there's aspects for us to look at going through, but I think that this is a very good start in moving that direction.
Say, as far as the HOAs, like we talked about the other projects, I agree, I mean, as much as that we can put on the HOA to maintain the interior streets and green spaces, et cetera, so that it's not a burden to the city going forward, absolutely. So, and then my next comment was kind of the same from a technical point of view, then, okay, well, let's talk about, this is still kind of conceptual stuff, let's see the plan while we're actually talking about it.
Thank you for your time.
You're supposed to do a plan now. Just give me direction. I told him I'd give him direction.
You know what I'm referring to.
I know what you're talking about.
Let me just say, I still feel like we have a canvas here. If you guys will help fill in things, and if you have thoughts, my email is just steve@edgehomes. I'm open, LoSci is open, and I don't mind if you go out there and just sit and listen and watch and think, boy, it'd be really nice to have this. The hammock park is something that they've done at Daybreak, that LoSci did, which I thought was going to be a hippie bill. It's a family gathering, yeah, which was, and it's a quiet park, it's not parents yelling at referees.
One of the things that I did have, just as you talked about programmable space
Yeah.
in the area, but still diversity of use of that open space. My question is are we planning for enough programmable space in there? Obviously, we're already at a deficit for programmable space. I think Wendy would back me up on that one. There's obviously between the stuff that's in Herriman and the stuff that's in Riverton, of course, that's going to be, those people don't care what side of the line they live on.
That's
They
right.
want access to both types. And, you know, which city does that? Again, not to split hairs, but which city does that fall in? Again, you mentioned some of, you know, making sure there's not a bigger burden on one than the other, but that's one thing I think needs to be looked at very heavily, as again, as you look at those other type of uses, is that programmable space.
So we have programmed the Riverton portion. My proposal would just be full disclosure to the city here, and to say this is what we're doing there. There is a need for soccer and lacrosse fields, is what their Parks Director felt like. I don't think there would be a reason to be redundant in that. I'm being told baseball is not what it was in the 80s, and I think those needs probably can be met. And then we also have the green space of the schools, so we just need to get with your Parks Department and figure out what our needs are.
Yep.
You mentioned Riverton, so we see some green space for Riverton up there. What is that going to be?
You're talking about the park on the north? It's 12 acres. And it takes in a little bit of a ditch, but that will all be programmable. I have 2 junior soccer fields, 10 pickleball courts, and 2 lacrosse fields on that. And essentially they're going to parallel park on the weekends is what we have designed currently. Pickleball seems to be the rage for cities at this point, and they are utilized. If we want to do more of those, they're no maintenance, no mowing, no watering, and you just take care of the nets and the chain link that surrounds them. So I am open to it.
Talia?
Oh, yeah, I feel the same. You know,
Okay, you guys are like rock stars, we're gonna keep moving.
Okay, thanks you guys.
Okay.
Looking
Thank you,
forward to it.
appreciate it.
Alright, 3.7, discussion of game point development agreement. Still board member.
Jim, get an argument out of me. You better talk about it.
I'm going quick. So, the purpose of this is tonight, we're gonna talk about the rezoning for Game Point. And what I want to do is, we have a sale, let me go through the slides. Okay. So this subdivision has already gone through the planning commission, and so it just needs to be recorded. We're getting that process done over the next couple weeks. We just gotta get the signatures. There's 2 parcels, parcel 1's small, parcel 2's big. We'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. So the purchase for the property right now in our contract, we have a closing on August 5th. The city's responsibility is to record a plat, rezone the property, have a development agreement in place with them, and a participation agreement. And we've run across some troubles to do that just because of our independence. So we only have one council meeting in July, and the next city council meeting is after the 5th. So we may be changing the contract so that we don't until after that next council meeting. The reason for that is we're working on the development agreement right now, and what we don't want to do is give you the development agreement on the 10th of July and say you have to approve it now, and there's no other meeting to do it. And so in staff, we talked, well, maybe, and we want the planning commission also to review the development agreements. That's one of the things we had talked about. So we thought, well, we could do a regular meeting, because we have a joint meeting. You guys scoot back, or I'm gonna hit you in the eye. It's a low angle. If I was standing, yeah. I don't want an HR issue. So what I'm saying here is, you know, this is a possible way to get done by the 5th. There was just too much discussion, we're rushing it. So what we're planning to do is we'll bring you the full development agreement and participation agreement on this meeting. We'll give it to the planning commission, and then in the first meeting in August.
Say that again.
We're gonna give them the development agreement to review on the 10th of July. We talked about that.
We talked about the 31st.
No, the 10th of July, development agreement.
We're just gonna review it.
Just look at it, we're just handing it to them. We're not gonna approve it anymore. We're gonna wait till August to approve it.
Okay.
I like that.
John has the 4th to work on it. The planning commission will see it.
the 5th too.
The planning commission will see it on the 18th. And then in the joint meeting, we can certainly talk about any issues and discussions. That will be one of the agenda items. And then in your meeting in August, you have the opportunity to approve it or continue to look at things. But, so we're probably gonna go back to the contract, to the owner, to Aaron who's here. He says that's okay. They're looking to try to get this going before it gets to fall, so they can start designing and going forward with everything. So we wanna get the closing done. So what I wanted to do tonight was just go through the points of the development agreement. So these are the points. We're selling them 6 acres, and this is essentially the price we purchased it for. They're gonna give us $1 million August 5th, and before they do anything, they have to give us the remaining portion by the 15th of March. It looks like it's gonna be sooner than that, but that's what the contract development agreement would say. Lot 1 is gonna be a food establishment. Lot 2 would be a family entertainment center, and he'll show you what that looks like. We can repurchase the property for the same price in 2 years if they have not pulled a building permit. The developer is going to contribute $100,000 for Miller Crossing property acquisition. Now, that's a capital facility road, and it's part of what we were working with the developer of the auto mall, that would be use some of the TIF money to help build those roads. So if he's paying for part of the right of way, we would reimburse him back with the TIF and some of the impact fees that he's paying for that property. But he'd pay this up front, and over time, based upon 50% of the point of sale, so he wouldn't get 100% of point of sale, 50% of point of sale would go back to help reimburse the money he gave up front. And he's responsible from all the back of curb improvements on Main Street, Miller Crossing, and Auto Drive. Let me go back to the drawing. So his property, fronts 3 roads. It fronts the Auto Mall Drive, Miller Crossing, and Main. So he's responsible for, we'll put in the curb and gutter, but after the curb and gutter, he's responsible for sidewalks, street lights, landscaping, and that would be the same on all 3 sites. So that's what you're gonna see in the development agreement. There may be some other points, but those are the big points. Boom. So you won't see that till next month. And we'll be showing you the presentation during the rezone in the other meeting. That'll be a public thing, so, because we've seen it in closed meetings, we want it to be, usually see what's happening while you're rezoning property.
So the safety mechanism for the city is if they don't pull a building permit in 2 years, we get to buy it back at the original cost.
That's correct.
This is gonna be a.
You're probably
Should
thinking the
shut
same
up.
thing I've been thinking.
But Walmart pulled a building permit, and I don't wanna get,
They did one, they never pulled it.
oh, they didn't pay for
They
it.
submitted and had approval, but they never pulled a permit.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
So here's kind of what I'm afraid of, is say, even if a building permit is pulled, and even if the building is built, but it fails or it never comes to fruition, now it's zoned commercial. Now it's not under control, maybe we're not positioned to buy it back, this is still something that's intended to be part of the auto mall. So if it's just zoned commercial, whoever the next owner is can put whatever is allowed in commercial. Is it too much to ask for also provision that if it doesn't, I mean, if it
it's
doesn't,
zoned
if
out
it doesn't build out 100%, not only do we get to buy it back, but it
automatically.
automatically
So let me, yeah,
defaults to the.
one more thing, in this development agreement, I blurred over that pretty quickly, it specifically states, lot 1 can only be a food establishment, lot 2 can only be a family entertainment forever. And if he ever wants to change that, if anybody ever wants to change it, that's on the land, that has to come back to the city, so they can only do those 2 things. So if they come back and say, this is C2, I wanna do something, no. The city has full driver's seat, that those are the only 2 uses they can do with that. And so if they came back and wanted to do a tattoo parlor, we would say no.
Well, there'll be two belt and suspended. First of all, we'll probably put a ZC on the property as to use. And the development agreement will have that limited use, but at some point in time, the development agreement will go away.
Right.
But the ZC will last forever.
But the ZC.
And you guys can.
That was.
And that's
that was
always in
my
the city's
question.
purview, so if at that point someone wants to change it, you can change it to an automobile zone. So it's forever your control.
Answers the question.
Yeah, my question was gonna be on a ZC, but John covered that.
Alright,
So remember that tonight.
this is Tom, Brett, 3.8, 15 minutes.
Lots been going on, 2 weeks, with so busy, right? So, I think we had a great turnout town days, great parade, had over 100 entries.
Temperature was perfect, so thank you.
Yeah, way to go.
Yes.
Just want to make a comment about that, and then appreciate the council being there in the booth, separate information. A lot of positive feedback we received, a lot of good questions.
I was able to do it till Saturday.
Thank you for doing that. We had a great, down in the back of the building department on a full permit. Came in, that's want to talk about this just briefly. 20 seconds.
Which floor?
The gentleman gave us a thank you for the process and talking to us.
Oh, yes, so he submitted for a permit, actually only like a couple of days ago. I reminded him it'd be about a 10-day wait, but he replied that he has been so impressed with the city. He's worked with several departments on several issues over the years that he's lived here, and just said, I've had nothing but good experiences, and is so happy he moved to Herriman because of the experience he's had with the city. So that was a great compliment to many departments, including mine, but many departments, yeah.
It's just good to hear those things. We love to
Yes.
hear about them. You don't get to hear them about as much as we do, but they are coming through. We also been meeting with the fire station still, had our meeting with 123 on, here's the one chief, but, Deeptune, we met with Seeptune, no, Apetune, and 113. That what keeps me resonate when I meet with these, different battalions and unified firefighters. If anything comes out in Tammy, can correct me if I'm wrong, but, what we're hearing loud and clear is they love working in our communities. They seek after to fit on our stations, to work out here. He says the best place you can find a fire area to work in because of our community and what we as a city bring to them as a partnership. And you know, we've always been very passionate about that, about you are our fire department, or our police department, we treat the people here very well and they treat us very well back in return. So, it's been very positive. We're talking about hillside rescue, water rescue, ice rescue, swift water rescue, dive rescue, and then our unicorns hazmat. And one thing we not have unicorns are known in the fire business as the things that don't happen very often. So 85% of the calls are medical, and then the rest are fires. And with Herriman, as you know, we have our specialty 103 station on Main Street, it's wildlands. We do burn. Top Mountain does burn. So, talking a lot about that and what's the best choices for our community. We're talking through some options as with our Herriman Police Department, we're a partner in working together and our volunteers to Hillside Rescue and possibly even some of the water rescue as well. So it doesn't overburden anybody, one thing. We always have resources on the ground that are there to take those things. We had 2 people going through the ISIS last year, so we're sensitive about that too, and they've always trained on that. Chief, you have anything else other than that?
No, I just appreciate your time coming out. I know it means a lot to the crews, and it's been great having you in the stations. So look forward to it.
Chief Carr, for the record, firemen are the best cooks. So. We've been doing their lunch meeting, so.
Duh. They can be the best cooks, supposed to be the best looking.
I knew that'd be a little poke, there's a little bit of competition going on there.
I just threw up in my mouth a little bit. But I'm not the only one. All right.
Yeah. Councilman Smith, myself, Chief Carr, Lieutenant Strongberg, and some other officers attended the Herriman City swearing-in ceremony. Riverton Heights, what did I say?
You said Herriman. Don't take me back there, we're good with it.
Yeah, we've done that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did that.
But it was the biggest thing I got out of it as we was trying to run pretty long too fast, right? So the biggest thing we got out of it is Riverton was very grateful. Chief Hudson made it very positive, and Wendy was there as well. I got to make sure she was there. But this, because you're important. She didn't know what the heck, look, but the biggest signal they gave us, and Clint knows this, is they said we couldn't have done this without Herriman City. Day one, when they decided to go to the police department, we was in there and helped them with the template. It's what you got to do. You got to do this. You got to do this. You do this. And that was from our administration, from our fleet, to our officers, our chief, walking them through radios, everything. But we always look at them as our neighbors, as our partners. We always take that approach. It's like our firemen, everything is a partnership. And Chief Hudson really gave a lot of accolades to your city and what we did to help them get stood up. I will segue into that to Chief Carr quickly because we're on a tight timeline. Some events that happened when we had an officer hit during the parade that apparently he had more injuries than we thought. And number 2, we had an incident last night at your police department. Even though we wrecked a truck, we did the right thing to get the guy off the street.
Scratch the truck.
Yeah, okay.
It's like a high school.
Yeah, we put some dents in it. So we did have an officer hit during the parade. We've had kind of a bad go of that kind of thing. Last night we discovered that he had some other injuries. We don't know really what's occurred, but he had to be taken to the hospital. And the reason that's important is A, he's one of our family, but B, it will segue into this next story that I'm about to tell. The U.S. Marshals, which we're a part of, we're out looking.
Sorry. For those that are watching, we're gonna get asked this question. How did he get? Can we say how he got injured in the parade? Because people are gonna be thinking that he was in the parade.
No. Oh, you're right. Let me elaborate on that a little bit. He was on traffic control.
It's a runaway candidate.
But you don't understand the amount of time that we have to spend afterwards answering all these questions.
Yeah, he was on traffic. He was at a traffic point, which is the worst job you can possibly have during a parade because everybody throws things at you and calls you all sorts of awful names. In fact, you were on the float right there as it unfolded. A young lady that was under the influence drove through the checkpoint, tried to drive through him, ended up striking him, I believe, in the knees or lower legs. She stopped. There was a little bit of a situation where he was able to get her out of the car and arrest her, and she was processed for driving under the influence. So
she went.
Yeah, and
the parade was over by
9th West and 33rd South.
Yeah. So my hat's off to all of the officers and the crossing guards and the firefighters that help us with traffic control and moving traffic and getting things where they need to be. It can be a thankless job that can be awful as well. So, United States Marshals, we're part of that system, that task force. One of our officers was out, and we've been looking for a gentleman that is a parole fugitive, and he's a violent fugitive. He's been convicted of stabbing. He's been in prison several times, and he was out. He was out terrorizing our neighborhood over the last few weeks, and Marcus took it upon himself to go find him and put him where he belongs, which is back in prison. In the process of doing that, he was in our neighborhood. He left our neighborhood. We, the marshals, amassed their forces back down at the village, and he was able to get out of the village after his tire was flattened by some spikes. He left the village in a hurry with them in pursuit, and they were headed towards Bangor. Our officer, Finlayson, Scott Finlayson, who my hat is off to this guy 10 times over, he was leaving the hospital checking on our officer that had been injured in this crash earlier, but he started to exhibit signs of that injury the other night, I think. Yet last night, he was checking on him, was leaving, thankfully saw the marshals coming his way. The car they were pursuing with the wanted fugitive in it turns to go on 134 northbound in the southbound lanes. The light has just turned green at 126, so there's a lot of traffic coming. Scott, without even thinking, took his truck, drove across the intersection, hit the car. Put it into a sound wall, and disabled the car, and then there was a big fight in the middle of the road. This guy just did not want to go willingly. So we dented one of your trucks, but for a very good reason.
In the wrong direction, could have killed somebody head on.
It would have ended very, very tragically. By the
right in our city, in the right area.
Yeah, he was driving back through Riverton, coming back to our city, and just happened to see it. And he was terrified by the time I got there that I was going to say, "What did you do to the car?" And I just gave him a big hug, and I said, "I'm glad you're okay." The first truck.
We'll talk about the truck later.
Yeah, we'll talk. As I was lifting his wallet out of his back pocket. And he just acted like he has been trained and knew what he had to do, and that was to take that car out. He's the bad guy's in custody. He's back waiting to go to jail, and he's probably going to end up on federal charges now, including state charges because of the U.S. Marshals. So I'd like to mention that the first truck, or the first vehicle coming down Bangor, was a UFA ambulance. So that would have ended very badly. Had he avoided that car, there was a whole line, as you know, at that time of night on Bangor, it would have ended with probably some critical, if not fatal injuries. So my hat is off to Officer Scott Finlayson. We should all be very, very proud that he decided to do the right thing. Not even in his city, just decided that he needed to do it. So hats off to him.
It's our neighbor city. We've been down there a few times already because of the police force that's been there recently was not
A little thin area. Yeah, they're a little thin down there.
So,
Is what we
but
experienced at Sioux State.
Monday that changes when Riverton stands our police department. So we.
But I'm glad we're being a good neighbor.
We are.
That's our job.
Absolutely,
To help them
always.
out as they transition, that's just part of being a neighbor.
And I told them and the other officers, if you were in St. George, I would expect you to do the same
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
So we're very happy about it. I mean, when you hear these things on the news, and you see the police truck on there, our truck on there, here's this little bit of a detail. Very proud of them, again, who we have hired and attracted to work in our community, and they take their job very seriously, they're very efficient at it, so.
They're the best.
So.
Portion that is okay.
He left that later that night, with a cracked rib.
So we're not sure how all of that transpired, but several days after that incident, we had some injury develop. We don't know why.
As we continue to develop our culture here in Herriman, we don't want to ever take our guests, put off the guests that's number one on our list. We discuss all the time. You hear me just talk about it quite a bit. We have a lot of employees that are dealing with a lot of issues. One, had a few employees off for different reasons, but we're very sensitive to their needs, like this officer getting hit. And we're keeping our pulse on that, and we'll update you when we have more information, but it's just, we love our family.
I'm impressed that
We love our
somebody's
culture.
kept that one away tonight.
I'm being careful without using names, but I'm just saying.
Everyone here, his family, everyone.
We have a lot going on, and we consider this all our family, and we're very sensitive. You know, we had good things while one of our employees got married last night. That's a good thing, but we're also very sensitive to what's going on. With that,
We let them take the day off after
What?
they get married. What?
Just one thing.
that's the actual question. But I need to let you know, segueing into that is, you know, our HR manager came to me and wanted to do a survey and enter to what Tribune does, best workplaces, top workplaces in Utah. And we we went through that process and surveyed by employees and stuff. And by the way, we don't wanna talk about this places to work.
Awesome.
So, we actually, when we're survey information, which give us more some details of places we can work on, and we're sensitive to that, but what we believe in our culture and treating people like this is our family, as a group, is paying off.
I mean, we all know this, but it's good that we can
It's good to have it
push
done.
it out to everyone else.
But also, those who know me, okay, we're not done though. We'll keep after it and see how we can always improve and be better and better and better. Cause we wanna try the very best and do that, you have to have a right place to work. So, very good news for us. And mascot run this Saturday, I believe RSL, mascot
Bear
ride.
Foundation, right.
It's gonna be RSL, it's a Harley ride for, tribal organization,
children.
but it'll be come through our community, want the residents to know that if they hear this rolling thunder of a couple hundred bikes, they'll know where it is. They'll be stopping for part of their checkpoint at RSL, and, our Yeti will be a part of that. He's gonna go down there, and I hope our Yeti doesn't ride a Harley,
The motors is also a big part of that.
Yeah, no,
event.
I know that meeting.
I know, city council starts.
We got that
Right,
special search.
Yeti will be in the sidecar.
Yes.
The last thing I have is, I go through the whole list, is our sales tax, increase again, 13.3% over last June, and then for the year to date, we're 14% year to date over last year. They increased our population from 39,224 to 44,877. Now, with that updated information, our population, if we still contract with Salt County Government Services, our contract only went from 333,404 to 381. So you already saved $50,000.
Good job. Motion.
Motion to adjourn to our regular city council meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned. See you guys in a minute.